Hey Rage, it's almost Halloween. Do you have any favorite ghost stories? Oh! Okay, follow you to Cabin 22? On my way. Dave Weaver and his dog Rage needed a vacation. What they got was a Halloween weekend that led them into a terrifying adventure of a lifetime. A murder mystery wrapped in the dark spell of a place built on sour soil. A land whose curse was only held at bay by the knowing abilities of a few dedicated people and a species other than human, holding on to its very existence, and others fighting for their very souls. Cabin 22, a haunting original novella, a traditional holiday reading, starts its 6-night presentation on October 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Journey Through the Gate on YouTube and Rumble.
Are you there?
Let's see if we're working tonight. Am I getting a 5 5 5 tonight? I hope so. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate y'all listening to this. This is, I believe, the 7th year, the first year this story was released as a serial, one per week, going through Halloween. Thank you, Uncommon Belief. Welcome, Chris. Welcome. Welcome all the new people here. I never know how to say your name, so I'm going to just call you Coy, if that's all right with you, darling. Happy Halloween. Chris, you know I love you, Vixen Doe. I know Scott's going to be in here soon, and Froze and everybody else. Listen, we have a lot of new listeners this year, so I just wanted to say I'm completely nuts. Yes, this is me doing all these voices. I would get up in the morning, and after about 2 cups of coffee, I would block out the story the way I needed to say it. And it was really funny because the only way I could do it was to do each person and write them. Coyote, okay, gotcha, babe. Welcome in. And I would write them out, each person in a different color. And it was funny, the colors that you choose. I mean, of course, like people like Skeet were red and Jed was orange, and it was just so easy to go into these different voices, although I swear I have no idea where they came from. So when I listen to this every year at Halloween with you guys, and I'm so appreciative to be here to do it again this year, I just laugh. I have no idea where some of this stuff came from. And I promise you, I was the only one in the room that you could see. I'm still amazed by it. I hope you enjoy it. It's become a wonderful part of my Halloween tradition, and I'm pleased to be here, especially this year, with each and every one of you. So tonight, without further ado, part 3 and part 4 of Cabin 22. Who's your favorite character? Put it in the chat. And tell me why. What do you like about that character? Are you noticing the subtle references, the foreshadowing in the music, little things that they're revealing that you're going to need later. And I think by taking this journey with each character, seeing how they became who they are, um, or coming into who they are, it's always very interesting to me for others to come in and say, I had a dog like Rage, or I knew somebody like Greta, or I can really connect with the things that Jeb probably went through as a child, and it's caused him so much trauma, even as an adult, um, that it still echoes in his mind enough to really power him uh, into some really bad situations, and so many others along the way. Of course, you haven't all the characters yet, but you're going to meet quite a few tonight. So I hope you enjoy. Happy Halloween. Thanks for being here with me.
The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 3. George shook his wife awake. "Wake up, Greta. You are dreaming again." He shook his wife's arm gently, and she stirred awake. "Oh, my. Oh, my." She rubbed her eyes. Was I doing it again?" "Oh, yes," he told her. "It's all right, though. It's all right." Getting out of bed now, and he eased his feet into his worn slippers that were just getting right, and he wouldn't let Greta throw them out. What was it this time? Not another accident? I can't stop, was it? She sat up, worried now. No, don't worry. It was nonsense, he assured her, and she eased up a bit. In the past, her own words had scared her so, and she couldn't even remember saying them. "Well, you'd think if I am to be burdened with this gift, I would remember something useful, like where I put the recipe for my mother's sriracha, or where I lost her ring that time." "Don't you worry, my rosebud. All things happen for a reason, and I love your sriracha." He smiled, and she felt better, grabbing a robe from the foot of the bed and wrapping it around her. It was chilly in the room, and she looked out the window. "It is still dark. Why are you getting dressed now?" she teased. He struggled into his flannel shirt and reached for his corduroy pants. "I am on the hunt for the Swanson's thrush today," he said proudly. "Oh, how could I forget such a thing?" she smiled. "I hope this year it will be the one that you get to take the good pictures, and you find him, and dress warm. Wear those boots I bought for you. Even though they pinch a little, they will help you on the slippery rocks." He smiled. It was their routine. She knew what he was doing, just as he knew she would be making something lovely for him to eat when he came back to the cabin, or have a crocheted scarf for him, or socks like last year when they stayed here. They came every year, sometimes in the spring and sometimes in late fall, and sometimes both, to catch migrations of birds rare to the area. This year it was the Swanson's thrush, and he would get pictures of the brown beauty and send them to the Audubon magazine with the other photos he got this season. Maybe this time he'd make the cover. "I am going to go down to the showers, get a hot soak on my back to wake me up, and then off I go before the sunrise. The thrush loves the water and the morning mist." "Well, I will be here. I have my new audiobook to keep me, and my wool work. You'd be careful out there in those woods. You call in on the hour, every hour, and don't make me wait." "Ha ha! I will, he agreed. He had bought them, her, really. A little walkie-talkie set so they could talk while he was on his adventures. It made her feel better. And, if he was being honest, him too. And if you are going this early, you'll bring some wood in and stoke the fire up, and I will make you a thermos of hot coffee and pack you some of my baklava to take with you. Thank you, Rosebud. I will get the fire before my shower now, and I will start the coffee. Looking out the window of the tiny cabin bedroom, she said to him as he grabbed up the clothes he had set out the night before with his little brown shaving bag, "The mist is thick this morning. You make sure you have your yellow light." "I do. It is in my kit with my camera and my gear, my love." Off they went to their separate duties. Fire stoked and coffee made, he carried a cup with him as he headed to the short walk to the showers. He loved his wife's coffee with just a pinch of cinnamon and eggshells to cut the bitter, she had said. And he loved the early morning, and he still had plenty of it in front of him. It was barely 4:30 a.m. Towel over his shoulder and his bags in his hand, he strolled past the other cabins and cut to the path that opened into the view of the manager's lodge. The shower stalls were located in what they called a longhouse, made of logs, of course. One longhouse for men on the right, and one for women on the other side of the general store. As he approached the lighted trail that led to the men's, he almost felt like he was approaching civilization again. The lodge was the only electric around, and it almost felt funny, even after a short time in the cabins. He could see lights on the manager's lodge from the window of the kitchen in the residence off the back end of the lodge, and knew Mrs. McGee would be making her sausage biscuits already. A very early riser. She always was, every year. And he would stop in and buy some for him and Greta to have before his adventure. His walkie-talkie was in his shaving case, and he knew hers was in her apron pocket by now. They never separated without them. He entered the shower's longhouse, and the lights came on with the door. Something new Chuck McGee had added this year. He placed his shave case on the last sink in the row and picked the shower stall in front of it. The tiles in there gleamed and smelled of pine. The McGees kept everything spotless here. Each stall opened up to an interchanging stall, with a lock on the green wooden doors, and a bench, and a place to hang your towel in each one. "Ha!" he said as he opened it and saw something else new this year. Large shower gel soap dispensers hung in the shower wall, and bright blue shower curtains hung between the changing stall and the shower itself. Last year they had been grayish blue and much older. Good for them, he thought. New lights, new shower curtains. Things must be going well for the McGees, and he smiled. He liked them both very much. He reached in and let the shower run on hot for a moment. He got undressed and thought, "Hottest water on the mountain," Chuck McGee often said, and he sure wasn't kidding. Dave woke with a start, still with the 12-gauge across his lap. Rage woke up too, and Dave could smell a hint of that smell again. Oh, no. He looked at Rage, who wasn't growling or staring at anything. But he felt uneasy just the same. "Morning, buddy," he said to Rage. "It is morning, isn't it?" He glanced at his watch, 4:25. That was just great. He figured that the 2 or so hours he had had was going to be it today. "Coffee," he said to Rage as he got off the couch and stretched, walked over to the kitchen and took the stovetop coffee pot he had ordered off of Amazon and took it out of the box. It came in 4 pieces, with the directions in the top pot. He took them out and threw them into the empty box the beer came in that he was using for garbage. "We got this, don't we, boy?" Rage, laying on the floor, had his head on his paws looking up at Dave with nothing but confidence, and let out a yawn. "Me too, boy." Dave dumped the coffee grounds into the top and filled the bottom with water. lit the gas stove with a match that was in a box on the counter, and said, "Let her rip." He took a can of Royal Canin out of the case, opened it with the pull tab, and looked around the kitchen, thought a moment, and grabbed a pot out of the bottom cabinet and plopped in the brown chunks. Looks good, boy." He placed it on the floor, and Rage jumped up, awake now, and Dave knew it would be gone before he got back from the bathroom. It was still dark, and he poked the fire as he walked by, making a mental note to get more wood out of the porch. He grabbed the Coleman lantern off the couch and made his way to the bathroom. He had to take a mighty piss, and the coffee would be a while anyway. The bath was small, a half bath, he recalled. A small sink and a toilet was all that was in there. What was that Mr. McGee called it? A commode, he recalled, and he set down the lantern spotlight so it beamed upwards and lit the small room in an eerie kind of way. He relieved himself and pulled the chain that hung from the tank that stood high above the bowl, and it flushed with a loud whoosh. Interesting, he thought. Commode. And he said it out loud with an understanding tone and a nod. He reached for the light and started out of the room, and the beam of the light caught a small mirror that hung over the sink. His face illuminated in the darkness of the small room. Dave could see what looked like black dirt on the glass. At closer inspection, it wasn't dirt at all, but a greasy-looking black goo that read, "Help me."
Jimmy! Yeah, come here.
Wait a minute, did you get her?
Yeah, I got her. Here she is. Jimmy, meet my sister.
All right. Yeah, she sure is, Minnie.
Don't you worry, mister. We'll get you a fella before the night's over, and then you can sing sweet love songs like Kitty Wells and Ray Chris.
Skeet sat on the couch listening now to a rerun of the old Grand Old Opry show playing over the radio. He was at least 2/3 of a jar into the best hooch this side of the Mississippi, and feeling all right. He was still stinging from the chastising he got from Jeb. Who did he think he was, anyhow? He said out loud to the cave and the dead occupants in the twisted mess on the floor. Sally answered back with a little whistle of steam. She purred along, dripping out the gold they had so depended on these days. "He comes in here ordering me round, telling me off. All I'm doing is my job." He tossed a Cheez-It toward the pile of rats that had grown by 4 since Jeb had left. "You listening to me?" he said to the rat on the top of the pile. Skeet's ball bearing had ripped half its head off, and Skeet spoke to one eye. "He thinks he's smart, keeping things from me, like the secret to his daddy's hooch recipe. I'll find it out. I tell you, I'll get him to talking one night when we're out night fishing. Get him all loosed up on hooch, talking about his daddy in the good old days, as he calls 'em. He tells me about 'em all the time. I hated that mean old coot. He's meaner than a snake." He tossed another Cheez-It at the rat, and it landed in the muck that used to be his head. Then, he pointed a nasty finger, still with old dried rat blood on it, at the rat and emphasized his next words. "I'll get those ingredients out of him, and I'll take care of him like I did that old Bob fool down at the lake. He thought he was smarter than me, too, till I cracked his skull open with that rock." He threw his head back, laughed again, pointed his finger at the rat with a grin that grew across his face. "He looked just like you when I sunk him in the river. put those rocks in his pocket to hold him down." The rat stared at him with a dead eye, and Skeet felt judged. I had to. He is going to tell on me. He found out I stole that money from his cabin. Wasn't much, couple hundred. And that old pocket watch with the train on it." He reached down in his overalls and fished in there a bit and drew back his hand now, holding the gold pocket watch he'd spoke of. There was a train in full speed ahead motion, frozen in time on its surface, in raised etching. He ran his filthy fingers over it, feeling the cold gold finish. He pushed the little button on its top, and it popped open to a cream watch face with beautiful gold filigree hands and funny numbers on it that looked like letters. The watch played a little tune. Skeet closed his eyes as if taken away somewhere just a moment, and listened. He opened them again, and inside the watch face it read, "To Robert eternally, your Susan." "Engraved, they call that," he said to the rat, who was still judging him with one eye. "In the grave is right." And he chuckled again. He snapped the pocket watch closed and stuffed it back in his pocket. He took another sip of the jar and talked to Farrah now, hanging on the wall. "You mark me. I'll get that damn ingredient, and your boy Jeb will wish he had treated me right." He heard a scratching behind him, and he turned and sat up all at once, spilling the rest of the contents of the jar down the front of him, and knocking the makeshift metal table over to boot. Ball bearings ran out of the bag, and then everywhere, as Skeet grabbed up the Widowmaker and a few of the bearings off the floor. With a keen eye on a drunken man, he loaded and aimed at what he called Big Buck. The biggest damn rat he had ever seen, he had told Jeb one day. "Damn thing is smart and it's messing with me. Won't take bait and always gets away, pulling one trick or t'other. But I'm on it. You can count on me. You can count on me." The words echoed in his head, and he struggled to stand straight, the hooch running through his head with those words. And for a moment it looked like two big bucks running across the case of jars on the shelf. "You just hold still, you son of a bitch." He swayed a bit, got his footing, and aimed true. Pulled back on the rubber sling and let her rip. Whomp! Shards of glass and Jeb's daddy's best shine sprayed the walls and Skeet. And Skeet stepped back to steady himself. Old Buck dove straight down and ran behind the still, avoiding the aftermath of Skeet's shot. "Damn it all to hell, you little bastard. You come back and take your medicine." He stepped back and landed on the case of mason jars. His foot got tangled up in them. He jerked and kicked some out, and they broke on the floor. The room filled with the smell of shine, and Skeet was real hot now. He grabbed a hold of the huge barrel of the still to steady himself and burned his head. "Ow!" He yelled and jumped away. The rat skidded past him and ran behind a couch. Gotcha now, you shit. Skeet moved forward to throw back the couch and finish off Big Buck. His boot landed in the pile of dead rats, and he slipped backwards, caught several of the ball bearings with his other foot, and that one move threw him back into the still. He caught a grip on the copper coils, and saved his fall. He landed on the 2x4s holding up the heart of that still. When he focused, the rat was now on top of the sugar barrel and seemed to taunt him with gray eyes and whiskers that twitched its judgment. One ear had been chewed down or tore off by another rat long ago, and Big Buck wore it like a badge. You little shit, look what you done did, and you're gonna pay. Now the rat just sat there in front of Drew and her little butterfly tattoo, egging him on, it seemed. I got your buddies, and I'll get you too. He bent, picked up a ball bearing off the floor, and aimed at the rat. But it was gone. Just Drew, smiling at him. Shut up, you bitch. Skeet saw a flit of gray just in time to catch Big Buck taking a turn down the tunnel, the one with the exhaust fans. Shit! Skeet kicked the jar in front of him, and it broke into the steel shelf leg and slowly seeped into the pile of magazines there. Damn it, anyway. He thought a second, and he came up with what he felt was a brilliant plan. All right, I got you. He grabbed a box of Cheez-Its, and what was left he dumped on the floor at the entrance of the tunnel, turned the Coleman spotlight on and aimed it right at the pile, turned over a crate and kicked away the mess on the floor in front of the still. He sat down on the crate for the best view, grabbed a handful of ball bearings and sat 'em next to him on the boards under the still's tubing, and grabbed a jar that was rolling next to him, unscrewed it, and took a long sip. He wiped his mouth with a dirty sleeve and stared down into the darkness of that tunnel. You're going to pay for this. I got all night. I'm going to get you. You can count on me. You can count on me. He reached over to the radio that had tumbled onto the floor and turned up the song and sang along with Garth. I got friends in low places. Sally was singing too, except Skeet wasn't listening. She had got damaged in his run in with that old buck. Her pretty copper coils got pinched and poked, and she was whistling now, whistling a low, sad tune all her own. Dave took a closer look at the mirror. What was that? Is this a joke? He didn't think it was funny, and he didn't want to touch it, and reached over to the roll of tissue on the wall, unrolled a handful, and wiped at the E in me on the mirror, and looked at the black substance on the tissue paper. Black, slimy, and sure smelled bad, too. This was not at all funny, and he wondered what his welcome cabinet surprise and the guy at the window if this wasn't some sort of a prank. He rolled up the tissue, ripped off a large piece of the Kleenex box on the tiny table in the corner with its pine tree print on it, folded it over the tissue, and stuck it in his jeans pocket. He was going to talk to Mr. McGee today and get to the bottom of all this. He walked back to the living room to find Rage staring at the steam from the coffee pot and the coffee boiling out all over the stove. Oh, man! Dave wasn't having a good morning, but he made the best of it, cleaned up things, and pulled the soaked directions out of the box on the floor. He shook them off and poured a coffee into one of the provided cups and drank it, grounds and all. You gotta pee, Rage? Let's go. Out into the morning mist they went, and Rage went right back to his tree. The air smelled wonderful, and Dave sat in the rocker for a moment took it all in. He saw lights through the trees and knew it had to be the lodge not far off at all. "Hey, boy, what do you say we get a hot shower and one of those biscuits Miss McGee told us about? Bet they are early birds, too." He took a long sip of what had to pass for coffee right now and hoped Miss McGee had a better version brewing over there. Rage close in step with Dave, they walked a short distance to the showers. Rage not happy with the leash, but enjoying all the outside smells. Dave pretty much the same. He hated the leash, too. It was for the strange people, really. Rage didn't need it. He also was enjoying the outside smells. He made his way via the charming hand-painted signs to the shower longhouse, it was called. He could hear a shower, and possibly a man singing opera, or very close to it, coming from inside, and he pushed the door, and it got louder. Not too shabby, he thought. A long row of sinks stood off the wall like soldiers, gleaming in white. A matching row of large shower stalls stood on the other side, each with their own dressing stall. Nice, he thought. There was a brown shaving case sitting on the last sink in a row, and he remembered he hadn't seen one since his dad's when he was a kid, and he smiled. Steam rolled from the top of the last stall in front of the case, and the singing stopped. "Hello?" Dave called. Don't mind me. I'm Dave, just getting a shower. My dog is here with me, too, Rage." And Rage woofed, as if to introduce himself. "Hello there," came a voice from the steam. "Welcome aboard. I'm George. Water is good and hot." "Great," Dave smiled. "I could use it." George started a song again, lower, but just as happy, and Dave picked a shower, too, in from the first. Opened the door to the changing stall, tossed in his gym bag, and brought Rage in with him. Locked the door, and hung the loop of the leash on one of the hooks provided, and drew back the shower curtain. Nice, he thought, and turned on the hot water. Skeet stared at the pile of Cheez-Its, singing along with Johnny Cash's Hurt and staticky transistor radio, and rolling 5 ball bearings around in his hand. The other hand was busy swishing around the hooch in the jar, slopping it here and there as he emphasized his favorite parts of that song. His jet black, greasy hair hung in his eyes in clump strands. He hadn't seen old Buck for a while, but he'd be back, and Skeet would be ready. "Boy, you bet I will." Johnny's song began to go in and out with the static trying to take its place, and Skeet reached out with a filthy hand and turned the transistor radio toward him, only dropping 1 ball bearing in the process, and a sliver of a grin came across his face. "I still got it. I still got a steady hand. And don't you go out on me now." He spoke at the radio. The song came back to clear again, and he smiled fully and turned back to the pile of orange cracker bait. Swaying now to old Johnny, the radio window white noise static again. And then it started to screech a bit. Skeet set down the jar on the boards, holding up the still, dropped the bearings onto the floor, and grabbed up the radio, angry now, and smacked its back where the batteries are kept. "Damn it now, that's Johnny you're messing with." He was warning the radio now. The radio went to silence, then started up the staticky wailing again. "You think you're taking care of business, do you?" A gruff voice Skeet knew well came from the dark tunnel of the cave behind the pile of crackers. What? Skeet, scared, froze and barely could speak. He looked in the direction the voice came from and picked up the Coleman and shined it all around the area. Nothing. Oh, come on now, man. Get your sheet together, man. Hold on. He coached himself along. You're just hearing things. That's that hooch talking. He tried to convince himself, and he laughed. The radio came back on clearly, and the volume rose to capacity, finishing Johnny Cash's song with a bang for sure. He shook his head a bit and pushed his hair back off his face and looked again down the dark tunnel. Nothing. He set the light beam back on the Cheez-Its and settled a bit, grabbed up a few ball bearings and tossed one down the tunnel. A metal click, click, click echoed and faded away as it bounced into the dark nothingness. He waited and heard nothing, and then the voice came again. I asked you a question, boy. Skeet stood up fast and sloppy at the same time, staring into the darkness of the tunnel. He knew this voice from long ago, yet not far enough in his past for him. Skater Davis, you're more worthless than that son of mine, that damn shocker that is. Skeet couldn't believe his ears. No, he's dead. I saw him put in the ground myself. Get yourself together, man. He whispered these comforts to himself. His insides felt like they went liquid. He stared into the darkness, not wanting to see what he heard. He heard one step, and then another, and a large figure formed in the shadows. Ezra Perkins took another step into the light and crushed the stack of Cheez-Its with one size 13 boot and ground the orange mess into crumbs. He smiled at Skeet, slow and long, with a toothpick in one side of his mouth. You think you're taking care of business, do you, boy? Skeet's knees failed him, and he hit the floor, and the world blacked out around him. Oh, man, this is what I needed, Dave thought. The hot water eased his muscles, and he stood one hand out onto the green tile wall and leaned in and just let the water cascade down his face. And his thoughts went over the last day's events, his ex, the lawyers, an 18-hour drive from New York to Huntsville. That last bit through Tennessee nearly killed him, he thought. Should have stopped along the way for more sleep than just the stolen hour or two back in Virginia in that Cracker Barrel parking lot. He's sure most of the events at the cabin and the black mist he saw was due to the lack of sleep. But rage, he had seen and heard those things too. He opened his eyes and drew back the curtain a bit and reached into his gym bag and rooted around for the shampoo he brought. Rage was sitting there and looking right at him. Nice to have a guard, he thought, and smiled. Few more minutes, boy. Almost done. Closing the curtain, he popped the top and poured more than he needed into his hand, and the mint and sandalwood scent filled a little space. Nice, he thought, and massaged the gel into his hair, listening to George finish his song and pick up another, and the sound of George's tap being shut off. The man's voice echoed off the tiles, and it sounded really good, he thought. He thought he heard the outside door open and close, but nothing else. Just George singing in English this time. Are the stars out tonight? I don't know if it's cloudy or bright. Just then, something grabbed Dave's ankle and held on tight. He let out a surprised sound from deep inside and opened his eyes, not knowing what had just happened, and caught a glimpse of a large black thing retreating quickly back into the space between where the tiles ended and the green wood partition started. Rage started barking, and Dave jumped into the little dressing area Rage was in, darting one open eye back and forth at his feet and the open space around the shower. George yelled, "Dave, is all okay?" Rage was looking, too, in between barks, and Dave grabbed the loop of the leash, using one burning eye to see, and unhooked the latch to the wooden door, swung it open, and tried to look at the door to the bathhouse exit. It was just closing, and he caught a glimpse of something large and black in the last 4 inches of outside he saw. "David!" a voice from behind. Dave opened his eyes again, shampoo lather running down his face and neck. He blinked, and a man, medium-built, pot-bellied, and balding, with a hefty mustache, wearing nothing but a towel, stood in front of the last shower stall. "Are you okay? What happened?" Rage sat by Dave, gave a whisper of a growl, and Dave said, It's okay, Rage," as he wiped the lather out of his eyes. "Yes, I think. Did you see? I better go after her." He spoke all at once in broken sentences. "What?" George said as he approached. "Well, you must be Rage," he said to the dog, and Rage wagged his tail. "You'd better stay here," and gestured toward Dave's nakedness. Dave only realized then he was standing there naked. "Yes, please go and see if you see anything." And George did, as Dave grabbed a towel, wiped his eyes, and wrapped the towel around him. George opened the door and peered out. "What am I looking for, David?" "Something huge and black," Dave answered, using his flannel shirt to wipe his face and eyes. "I see nothing but darkness," George replied. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked as he came back. "Something grabbed my ankle from under the wall partition, and must have been in this stall." Dave kicked the door open to the first stall with a bare, wet foot, and saw a black streak on his ankle as he did. George pointed. "Odd, that." And he saw it the same time Dave did. Dave sat down on the bench and lifted his foot, touched the black streak, and rubbed the substance in his fingertips. It felt greasy, and he smelled it. Motor oil? Grease? He had no idea, and he was questioning his own mind. "I don't know what is happening here, but I see your ankle is turning red. Is it motor grease, you said?" George questioned. I don't know," Dave said, "but it was something all right. Why would anyone do such a thing? But it was huge, the part I saw, and the hand or paw or whatever it was also huge. But I didn't get a good look either time." Rage sat between them, and George held his towel up with one hand and extended another out toward Dave. "Well, I am George. Pleased to meet you." Dave's eyes, still stinging, reached out and shook his hand and said, "I'm glad to meet you." "That's Rage, and I'm Dave." "Let me look again." George went to the outside door, opened it, and looked around, and then shut it. I don't see anything. Looks like the McGees are up, though. You should get that soap off. I have to shave, so I'll stay here while you finish. Keep an eye on things. We can get a good look around out there together." He nodded toward Rage. "Okay if I pet him?" George said, "Sure. That okay, Rage?" And it was, and George scratched his head. He saw it, too. "I heard him barking," George remarked. "Yup, he did. Darn leash probably kept him from reaching it, though. He can stay out here with you if that's okay. Nothing will get in. Just don't let him out, okay?" George smiled. Sure. We will have a song and a shave, won't we, boy?" "Go ahead, Rage." And off they trotted toward the far sink. Dave got back in the shower and thought about the black goo on the mirror. It wasn't the same, he thought. This one smells like motor oil, dirty motor oil, and the other one stunk to high heaven. He remembered he had the tissue wrapped in the cardboard in his jeans. And the men finished, and Dave felt better in his fresh clothes, and George told him of his adventure to getting a sighting of the thrush and hopefully some good pictures. and told him about Greta's baklava and about the trail to the good fishing spot off the Blue Trail. And he had suggested Dave take that one for good fishing. They left the shower building together and walked on up the manager's lodge. Dave's eyes were still burning, and he thought he could find it blindfolded if he needed, because he could smell those biscuits and coffee too. George continued to call him David, and that was fine. Sounded right coming from this gentle character. George was neatly shaven and full of life, and joked about his need to call in to Greta. She feels better when I do. Yes, Rosebud, I will be back shortly, he finished with over. A crackling voice came back. Dave couldn't make out what it said. No, not too late to catch the morning mist. Getting some biscuits from the McGees. Need anything else? Over. The crackling. Careful. Over is all Dave caught. Will do. Over. George put the walkie in his vest pocket now, a brown hunter's vest with so many pockets Dave chuckled a bit. If you meet Greta today, I would ask you not to mention your incident just yet. David. She upsets easily, and Dave said no problem, and that he understood. They reached the door to the little general store, and George reached to open it. When we have a moment to talk, I will tell you a few things I have heard going on around here. Dave's sore eyes widened. Mr. McGee has a no-nonsense approach to the weirder things, and he won't take kindly to his guests being bothered on this campground, though. Let's get a cup of coffee, and I will tell you what I know. And Dave agreed. All three went inside the dimly lit store. Mrs. McGee did have coffee. Dave got a large cup, black, and 3 biscuits. Mrs. McGee put 3 of her homemade peanut butter dog biscuits in a brown bag and gave Rage another. They said nothing about the incident. Outside, they sat at a large picnic table on the side of the general store. George told Dave that there was talk here and there about seeing things like a black mist or a large black thing just off the trails. 2 days ago, he spoke with a woman while her 2 boys fished in the river off the Blue Trail. She had asked him if he had heard anything going on around here. George had told her he and his wife had been coming up here almost 8 years, sometimes twice a season. Nothing seemed to go on until this last spring. George leaned in toward Dave when he said that she told him she had to change her cabin and that she and one of her boys saw something in the first one, something big and black. It had a bad odor and it scared them very much. They had stayed in 22 like you, Dave. Dave was relieved and shocked at the same time. Dave told George that he had seen something, but he wasn't sure. Do you think it was the same you saw at the showers? Dave remembered the tissue, took it out of the cardboard, and showed it to George. Whew, that stinks, George winced, and folded it back up. It's not the same as today. That was dirty motor oil, if I had to guess. What is going on around here, George? I don't know, David, but my wife has taught me things I never thought I'd believe. Over the years, I have seen things, too. Things science and common knowledge can't explain away. Dave told him of the incidents in the cabin, the cabinets, and everything else, and feeling better now that George wouldn't think he was crazy. And he didn't. I can tell you this. Old Bob, that's what everyone called him, lived in that cabin over a year. They found him drowned in of a fishing accident, they said, down by the river. That's a huge lake off of the river off the Blue Trail. And he was there where that mouth opens and water gets rough on those rocks. But it just doesn't sound right to me. I got the story in pieces and been trying to put it together myself. There are a lot of repeat campers here and yearly stayers down at the RV park. Word gets around. McGee is a decent, hard-working man and tries to keep a lid on it. He has a full house this week. All the cabins are booked. He does his best to keep it safe and peaceful. Word got out that the woods are haunted or something, and has been doing his best to hold back those paranormal groups from running around with cameras and such. Dave nodded. He just doesn't want to get a bad reputation up here in the cabins, but he's trying to do his best. You can't keep people out, though, if they want to get in. I think that's why the McGees have been so busy this season, able to add on extras this year. Just my thoughts, though. It makes sense. I can't tell you exactly what's been going on in my cabin, but I have my eye on it. Have you heard anyone else other than the lady with the 2 boys? Dave asked. Joan. A little. Still trying to fit the pieces together. I can tell you more this evening if you like. I usually come out here by the fire pit, enjoy a cigar with Chuck McGee. I can tell you again, though, he is a non-believer. Calls it nonsense. I truly think it scares him. So we can meet a touch earlier if you like. McGee doesn't usually come out till about 10 p.m. or so. That work? Dave said that it would be fine. 9 p.m. then. George told Dave he would be headed down the Orange Trail to get close to the little waterfall where the thrush may be. That there was everything the Swanson thrush loved. Best fishing is off the green, the yellow, and the blue trails. Follow the signs. They talked a bit about fishing, and Dave laughed about going around back and trying the worm machine. George said goodbye to Rage, who took to him right off, agreeing to meet again tonight. Dave gathered his 2 other biscuits and the bag of peanut butter treats for Rage. Went around to the worm machine, put in his quarters, and got a little box with, worms and dirt in it. Amazing, he thought. George called back to Dave. Dave, have you ever heard of anything called a rougarou? Dave thought for a moment and walked up to where George was. He had not. What is it again? A rougarou. Dave shook his head, but told George he had planned on going down to the mountain to grab some supplies, and he should have a signal there, and he would be happy to look it up on his phone for him. Technology, George laughed and waved a hand and a thank you as he cut off the dirt road toward the cabin and Greta. Dave walked on with Rage. Rougarou, Rage. You ever hear of that one? Rage just kept his eye on a squirrel who darted across the road, and Dave got his fishing stuff out of the truck, and they went back inside the cabin. Everything in its place. Dave checked the contents of the tackle box and sat down to finish eating and read the directions of the coffee pot. George set up his tripod for his camera. The waterfall was lovely. The mist was just starting to lift from the grass. Thistle and wild black-eyed Susans danced to the sounds of the earth waking up. Even the kudzu was pretty here. Calls his ears knew began to sing to him, cardinals, chickadees, ruby-crowned chicklets, and a mourning dove called to her mate, and the waterfall was their accompaniment. Binoculars around his neck, he set up his second tripod off to the direction of the downstream river. He had an overview here of several of the trails that widened around below him. The yellow trail marked every so often with the splotch of yellow paint on a tree, or an unassuming wood sign low to the ground marked the trails. Blue to his right, snaked in and out, and clear around the side of the mountain. A long one for sure. There were 12 marked trails in all. He had walked them all over the years. Here was the best spot to wait for the thrush. Opened his little folding stool, took out the thermos of coffee and a piece of Greta's baklava, and sat down to wait and listen. Dawn was cracking, and the boys were thrilled to finally get to Old Blue today. They had finished breakfast and were getting their fishing gear. Joan smiled and was glad that things were picking up since they moved cabins. She packed her book, hoodies, and things for the boys and some snacks in her backpack. The boys were goofing on each other and grabbing their fishing gear. "Off we go, boys," she called after them. "I'll beat you," yelled Jacob to his big brother. "No, you won't either," Mike answered, and they sped past Joan like whirlwinds, and Joan laughed. "Wait for me now," and shut the door. George heard the familiar song he was waiting for and slowly lifted his binoculars and followed the sound. His excitement rose as he alternated from the binoculars to his eyes and then back again, zeroing in on that sound. There she was, the Swanson's thrush. He quickly let the binoculars quietly fall around his neck and lifted the camera that was there. Snap, snap. He took multiple shots. Eased his step back and used the camera on his tripod. Snap, snap. The thrush skipped over to another branch. The morning sun shone on its feathers. Another round from the camera around his neck. She flew off and landed on the branch with the little waterfall in the background. And George moved behind the tripod again, focused, and set off a series of good shots. The brown beauty flew up and over the stream, and George followed her with his binoculars so he could catch another shot. She was gone. But some movement caught his eye. A small boy, seeming to, track a rabbit, with the cunning and skill only a boy could have. He chuckled. He was on the trail down below, and George looked further up the trail and saw a woman with another boy. It was Joan, doing something with Mike's shoe. He slowly focused back to little Jacob, not far away from them, but enough to be scary, he thought. Out here, anyway. There's holes and rock slides. What was the boy doing now? The rabbit turned off the trail and went further into the thicket, and the boy followed. George focused in. The brush was very thick here, and he could only see flashes of the boy. And then the boy standing near rocks and lots of kudzu covering most of it. He was pulling on the vines and pulling back those green vines with the large leaves. Jacob reached in his back pocket and got a flashlight and pulled at the vines again, and they gave way, and the boy seemed to step into the small opening and just disappeared. "What in the hell?" George whispered. "That's not good at all. A hollow in the rock? A cave, maybe? Oh, no." He stood up on the rock near his camera tripod. "Hello!" he yelled, waving his hands. "Hello!" He focused on the woman with his binoculars and yelled again. Nothing. The waters from the falls, maybe, drowning out his calls. Oh, no, he thought. This is not good at all. He threw his cameras in his bag. He'd come back for the rest, his tripods and his stool. Threw his backpack on and made his way down the rocks that he had climbed up on, his pinching boots doing their job to help him ease down. Greta was right. The grip on these were good. He would hurry to warn Joan, but even at his best, it would take longer than he wanted it to. Jeb woke up, and his head just hurt. Oh, man. Not only because of the position he had fell asleep in, with his head on his desk in his office in the back of that old garage, But he had sat in his truck for a while after his run-in on the road last night, and he drank the contents of a flask that he had carried in his truck. It used to be his daddy's flask. Still had his initials on it, too. When he was done with that, he drank the moonshine he kept in his desk. The combo was wreaking havoc on his head right now. He was foggy, too, and he smelled like piss. How long had he been here trying to get this experience out of his head? Whew. It just wasn't possible that he saw what he thought he saw on that road. Just not possible at all. He was behind now, too. Hadn't done a stitch of work on that John Deere he had to finish. Oh, just wasn't possible. He thought again, shook his head. He rubbed his face and blinked and looked up toward the dirty window, and the sun streaked in through the dirty glass, and he knew he had slept through the night. Oh, man, I done it now. I gotta get that tractor done. He tried his best to stand up, and his head spun, and he sat back down. The front of his head was banging, and he was in bad shape. He opened the drawer to his right of his old beige metal desk. Just the sound of the metal slide on the drawer made him wince in pain. Stuck his hand inside of the drawer and felt around. Took hold of a jar of aspirin. Shook out about 10 of them into his hand and threw them in his mouth and chewed 'em up. He slowly got up and made his way to the old garage bathroom sink that was covered in greasy handprints and had a chip missing off one corner. And he pulled the string that turned on the light and winced at the brightness of it. Turned on the spigot and reached down and drank the water from the faucet. Held his head back to swallow the aspirin and then repeated it. Then he threw some water on his face and looked into the dirty mirror. As he stared at his reflection in the filthy glass, he heard his father's voice. "You sure are a mess, boy. You ain't taking care of business. You are worthless. That's what you want to be. Worthless. Go and handle your business." This last part tore through his head as if his father was standing right there, and he pinched his nose between his eyes to hold pain from running across his face. That's when he remembered Skeet still at the cave watching the still. "I double damn guarantee that old son bitch got drunk and didn't finish his job either." He quickly threw more water on his face, lifted off his old cap, brushed his hair back tight against his head, put the cap back on, and fast-headed out of the back door to where he always parked his truck, round the back of the old garage. As he opened the door, the sun hurt his eyes, and he squinted and winced. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them and focused on his old green Chevy. Fumbled for the keys in his pants pocket. Yes, he thought, they were there, and made his way toward the truck, mumbling to himself about how Skeet better finish those last 2 cases of hooch. He stopped in mid-stride, dead in his tracks, squinted again, then focused on the side of the pickup. There were 4 long claw mark scratches from the start of the passenger side door to above the back wheel well. They were deep and actually dented along each one with the force and power of the beast that was behind them. From the top mark to the 4th, the width measured as wide as the hubcaps on his tires. Jeb felt his chest get tight and his stomach started to whirl, and he bent over and threw up.
I see you, la 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 la.
Jacob knew he wasn't going to catch that rabbit. He knew. I'm not dumb like my brother and my mama think. Rabbits run fast, he thought. But just like that girl who was dumb in that book that Mom had read last year, he was going to see if this rabbit would show him something. Something, I don't know, secret? Jacob whispered this last word to himself like it was magic. He'd just quick see if this was something back here. A hideout, maybe? Treasure, like that other book with that pirate. You know, the one with the stick for a leg. The rabbit had led him this far. This was a secret cave. The door was hidden with that green vine stuff. But the rabbit, he knew it was here. So many stories he had remembered had caves, he thought. As he made his way behind the rabbit, it did seem to lead him. It took a quick turn at the entrance and followed a small, tight tunnel, and Jacob got down low and quickly followed with his light. Oh, Mom would be mad for sure. But if he found treasure, she'd forgive him, wouldn't she? On they went. Jacob saw an opening ahead, and the rabbit took off. "Hey, wait for me," he whispered. Jacob put the little flashlight in his mouth and crawled forward after the fuzzy little guy with the secret hiding spot. Joan took the rock out of Mike's shoe and tied the laces in what she called a mama knot. Just a double knot, but she started calling that after Mike stuck his 6-year-old foot up with his old dirty Converse sneaker on it and asked for a mama knot, 'cause it kept coming loose, Mama. She laughed at the memory and tossed his hair, which he hated, and she tried to do that at least once a day, and said, "Stay close now. Those sinkholes are deep, you know." Mike looked over his shoulder. "Hey, Mama, where's Jacob?" Panic hit Joan in a tight squeeze in her chest, and she quickly turned around. "Jacob, Jacob, come out here now." She ran back up the trail a bit, retracing their steps, her head racing. Okay, he was just here. Mike started calling too. "Come on, you little goof. We're going to be late for the fish." Parent panic started to settle in fast on Joan's chest, and she was fast into full throttle mom. "Jacob, you come out here right now. This is not funny." Prayers, ideas, and help me God all played in her mind at once, and she mindlessly grabbed Mike's arm as she backtracked her steps, keeping him close till she could see them both together and okay. "Jacob!" Rage was loving this adventure now, sans the collar and the long leash, running circles around Dave, up the trail and back down, sniffing everything. Dave walked with his tackle box in one hand and the pole over his shoulder, and that made him think of that old Andy Griffith show, and he just laughed. By the signs, they were a quarter mile into the Blue Trail. Fishing spot wasn't far off from what George told him earlier. It was a beautiful morning, and this is exactly what he had come up here for. Rage nosed at a butterfly, bright orange in the sun, that was sitting on a rock, and he wished he had brought a camera. Dave thought he heard a woman yelling, but the echo and the sounds of the outdoors distorted it. He stopped. There it was again. "Jacob?" he thought. Skeet woke with a start, heard the transistor playing a forgotten staticky tune. His head felt like a brick. Where am I anyway? He focused above him, squinted his eyes. The cave, he thought. Oh man, my head. He pushed his feet to get up, and the room seemed to spin. He focused on sitting up instead. He held his head in his hands, palms to his eyes. Oh, this is a bad one. He ranked this hangover. No stranger to them. He looked up and around him, trying to remember. The place was a mess. He tried to push himself up again and grabbed onto the crate and sat on that, looking at the tossed-up couch and broken jars on the floor. Man, this is a mess. Slowly, the events started to come into focus. The damn rat! Ouch! This made his head split. He palmed his eyes again and felt like he was holding his face on. Just then, he remembered the dream he'd had. Oh, that was no dream. That was a nightmare. He told himself, "You gotta get it together, man." He remembered Sally and turned himself around on the crate to check the drip jar. Scared he'd let her run over. As he did, he looked toward the pile of Cheez-Its. They were crushed into dust. He heard a whistling in his head as his fear came back home, and he realized it was no dream. "That's right, shithead. I'm right here." Ezra stepped into the light of the Coleman still going on, smiled at Skeet, took out the toothpick, and pointed at the still. "Game over, you worthless shit." Terrified, Skeet looked uncontrollably toward the still with his jaw hanging open. The whistle that was coming from Sally. His eyes opened wide in realization. Oh, You have been listening to The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 3. What just happened after the still blew up? Did Ezra's ghost come to try to stop the still from blowing? What is Jeb going to do now that he knows that he was attacked by something in the woods? What was that large wolf, man, dog thing? Tune in and find out. Part 4 of The Strange Case of Cabin 22. Welcome to part 4 of the strange case of Cabin 22. The Reckoning. Joan and Mike were shaken by a blast from their left. The ground seemed to move a bit under their feet. A hot blast of air flew right in front of her and carried bits of rock and black smoke. She fell to her knees, grabbed Mike, and held on tight, covering him. "What in the hell was that?" she whispered to herself. She heard rock falling and looked up to be sure they were not under some kind of rock slide. The sound was coming from her right and to her front, up the trail a bit. She held on to Mike and started yelling again. "Jacob! Where are you?" and honestly, she was afraid to move. Dave and Rage heard a blast coming from ahead. A good bang and a slow rumble. Odd, he thought. There wouldn't be blasting here, would there? Rage barked in the direction, and Dave matter-of-factly said, I don't know, boy. Dave looked up to the mountainside above them, remembering the falling rock sign on his drive up, and instinctively moved to the other side of the trail. Let's go see, boy, but stay close. Rage did, and he himself felt the urgency rise inside him. As all the animals, he had an extrasensory field in his bones. Lucky Dave was in the group of humans who pays attention to such things. They walked together around the turns of the path toward the direction of the loud boom they had heard. George felt the blast before he heard it. The rocks he was sliding down shook from underneath him. Then he heard it, the loud boom, coming from behind him. He stood up and did his best to see anything from that direction, but was blocked by the trees. Just a long stream of black smoke rose from the Blue Trail and his new friend and her sons. George moved as fast as his 70 years would allow, and his heart beat with new motion. Tater rounded the corner of the old Perkins garage, where the dirt road turned to a gravel parking lot. It was filled with skeletons of old dark cars and a few older tractors. Farm equipment, pieces separated the pickups from the cars. An old tiller he used himself with his dad down on the farm and harvest echoed memories of the life he loved as a boy. His family, all gone now, working at this old garage and his caretaker job at the cabin, is what he had left. He was an average mechanic, not as good as Jeb or old Bob used to be, but he was all right. He liked to work on older cars, not those new things with all the gadgets and those sensor things. Damn machines were robots, really. Not a meat and potatoes vehicle like a 65 Mustang or like that 1970 Challenger he got to help Jeb with last month. It was canary yellow, one with the black racing stripe. Pretty old girl she was, he said out loud to himself. He circled around the side that blocked his view of that old playground off the RV park. That place gave him the willies, and he avoided it like the plague. His little revved-up golf cart crackled its wheels on the gravel as he rounded the building. And there was Jeb, sitting in the same gravel, his head down in his hands and looking rougher than a raccoon gone 3 rounds with a mountain cat. Jeb jumped up when he heard the cart entering the lot and looked up at Tater, his hat in his hand and shielding his eyes from the sun. "Jeb, you okay?" Tater shouted. "What you doing in the ground? Did you fall or something?" Jeb rolled on his knees to begin the long climb to standing upright. Tater jumped out of the golf cart, barely coming to a stop, and he helped his friend up, brushing him off as he did, his 6+ frame blocking the sun on Jeb's skinny, almost stick-figure stature. Tater fawned over him like a mother hen and machine-gun questions to him all at once. "What you doing on the ground, Jeb? What happened to you? You look just awful. Are you hurt?" Jeb couldn't answer. He still swayed with the weakness of his hangover and his overwhelming fear. I'm okay, Tate. I just gotta get her inside. Gotta clean up. I gotta get inside. Tater grabbed Jeb up under one arm and bent down to grab the hat Jeb dropped while he was getting brushed off. Tater saw the puke, and then he saw the side of Jeb's green Chevy. His eyes widened, and he let out a scared, "Oh! Jeb, what happened? Oh, no! What's wrong with your truck, Jeb?" Jeb stiffened a bit and added, Ain't nothing, Tate. Got too close to an old tree is all. Get me inside, will you?" Tater walked his little buddy along toward the garage. Sure. We gotta get you cleaned up, Jeb. You smell like piss. Are you sure you're okay? Boom! A loud explosion from off the mountain came loud and echoed a rumbling that sounded like that time that old factory blew up back in the 90s when he was a kid and all those people had died. Jeb stiffened up under Tater's arm, and he looked in the direction of the blast. They both saw black smoke start to billow over the trees. Jeb's heart fell. Jeb knew the direction well, and he felt what was left of his strength leave his body. He bent over Tater's arm and threw up again. Mr. McGee was working on the tail feathers of a huge eagle he was carving out of a redwood stump for his wife. He had saved this piece of fine wood for something special, and this eagle was it. The chainsaw, his wife called a noisemaker, covered the sound of the blast, and the rumble under his feet was lost to his concentration. Mrs. McGee felt it, though. In her kitchen, her good china started to rattle in the china cabinet, and her spices in the rack clattered together, and she steadied herself against the counter and whispered, "Oh my, what in the world?" and started to yell for her husband. "Charles! Charles!" Greta felt it too, reached over to turn down her audiobook and just listened. What was that? She thought out loud, and she touched the walkie-talkie in her apron pocket, thought twice, said a little prayer. George, are you all right? Over." "George!" she yelled into the device now. A crackle of static. She could hear a heavy breathing, and she listened intently. Finally, "Yes, Greta, I am okay. Over." "You're breathing, George. Are you running? What happened? Over." George steadied himself a moment. "Greta, I am fine, but there's some sort of explosion. An explosion in the mountain. I mean, a cave, maybe. Oh, Greta, I don't know. There was a blast, but I am fine. Over." "Oh, no. Were you close to it? Over." "Greta, it wasn't too far off. I'm okay. I need you to go to the lodge. Listen to me carefully. Go and call the sheriff. Tell them there was an explosion of some kind on the blue trail. The blue trail, Greta, do you hear me? Do you copy? The blue trail, about at a quarter-way marker. Do you understand? Over." Yes, George, I understand. You need the sheriff. Quarter-mile marker, blue trail, explosion, maybe a cave. Over." "Yes, that's right, Rosebud. I am on my way down there now. Tell them come quickly. I think it was a cave-in of some kind. Greta, and tell them I think a small boy went in there moments before. Greta, do you understand what I'm saying? Over." Greta raised her hand to her heart as if the news of a child being hurt could make it fly from her chest. "Yes, George, I understand. The sheriff And an ambulance, too. Over. Yes, Greta. I need my hands now. I have to climb down. I am okay. I'm going to warn the mom. I saw him go in with my binoculars. And I will call you as soon as I am down to the trail. Go now. Run, Greta. Over. Greta assured him she would. She was already out of the door of the cabin and quickly making her way to the lodge and the only landline close by. Yes, George, I am on my way. Be careful. Over. Greta. Greta. Pray. Over. I already am, George, she thought. Mrs. McGee was coming out of the office door when she saw Greta Steele running up the path toward her, waving. She ran to meet her. Are you all right, Greta? She asked as she met her friend. Greta tried to catch her breath. Phone. Sheriff. Explosion. Oh, no. I heard it. Where? How do you know? And saw the walkie in Greta's hand as they both started to run toward the office. George, he saw it. An explosion, he said. A small boy, he said, went in. Oh, we have to get the sheriff. Get the sheriff, she said through heavy breathing and fear. They reached the office and Greta threw herself against the counter and leaned toward the phone, walkie-talkie in one hand and holding her chest with the other. May McGee ran around the corner and lifted the receiver of the phone and dialed the number written on the wall in blue ink. Sheriff Cook's office, it read. It rang twice, and a friendly yet professional voice came over the line. Madison County Sheriff Department, Officer Nan Burnett speaking. Nan, it's May McGee, up at the cabins? Oh, hi, Mrs. McGee. What's the trouble? Those kids again? No, Nan. Mrs. McGee cut her off. Listen, I need Sheriff Cook right away. There's been some kind of explosion. Explosion? Where, Mrs. McGee? Off the mountain here, off one of the big trails. Okay, Mrs. McGee. Hold on, dispatching. Unit 4, we have a code 2 and a possible 10:30. Hold. Mrs. McGee, can you explain this again? Yes, a guest here at the cabins called his wife over a walkie, one of those walkie-talkies, and said he saw the explosion. Where, Greta? She looked at Greta, getting her breath. About the quarter-mile way marker on the blue trail. Said he saw a small boy, possibly, that going into the cave there, near the explosion. Okay. Yes, on the blue trail here, about a quarter-mile marker. Nan, he says he saw a small boy go in there. I don't know, but we need help quick, Nan. Can you send the sheriff? Okay, Mrs. McGee, I have help on the way. I will get Sheriff Cook, too. Joe Parker is on his way now. He's already got the sirens running. Stay on the line a moment. Nan ran around her desk and opened the door to Bill Cook's office. Sheriff, there's been some kind of explosion up at McGee's place. Bill Cook sat up in his chair, grabbed his hat in one hand, checked his revolver on his side mindlessly, and headed out the door. Danker, let's go, he called to the deputy. Anyone hurt, Nan? May says there may have been a small boy, went into a cave there, a cave of some kind maybe, and it blew. I'm still getting information, but Joe is headed on the scene. Oh, Lord, we're going to need extra hands. Call the EMTs and get search and rescue on standby. Will do, sir. Be careful, and please let us know, she called behind them. Unit 4, she called over the radio. Sheriff and Unit 2 en route. Getting EMT behind you. 10-4, ETA 10 minutes, Deputy Parker called back over the radio. Nan pushed the hold button. Mrs. McGee? Yes, I'm here. Okay, do you know if anyone else is hurt? I don't, Nan. I'm going to get Charles here, get the four-wheelers out. Is Sheriff Bill on his way? Yes, Joe is almost there. I have EMPs dispatched, search and rescue on standby. Thank you, Nan. You stay strong, Miss McGee. Call me if you need anything else, and tell Charles that too, please. Thank you, Nan. Greta and May McGee both went out to Chuck McGee, standing in a pile of redwood dust, and they told him what they knew. "Is that all he said, Greta?" Chuck asked. "Yes, he's climbing down to where it happened," he said. "Gonna warn the mother. Said he saw the boy go in through binoculars?" May added. "Joe Parker is on his way," Nan says, "and Sheriff's right behind him." "Okay, May." And he kissed her forehead. "It's all right. We will figure this out. I'll get the four-wheelers out for the boys. Greta, can you get George on that thing?" "I can try," Greta answered. George, come in. Over." A pause. "Greta?" Heavy breathing. "We're almost there. Over." She handed the walkie to Charles McGee. "George, Chuck here. Are you okay, my friend?" Yes, it is awful, Chuck." "Stop running and tell me what you know." "Chuck, Joan, and the kids on the trail with the boys. I saw the young one got into a cave or a hollow. I don't know if that was the place that blew up. The explosion I heard. I only saw black smoke." Chuck moved from the back of the lodge toward the opening of the trees, and he saw black smoke billowing in the wind against the blue sky. "Okay, George, you stay safe and let me know when you get to the trail." He walked off from the women a bit, and his voice trailed. "I'll wait for Joe Parker, and we'll be right up with the side-by-sides. Are you hurt at all?" No, just in a hurry, Chuck, okay? And tell them to hurry. Get up here. That poor boy." "Over?" "We will. Over." He handed the walkie to Greta. "I know where he is. I'm gonna go get the wheels ready. You gals go make some coffee and stay calm. And stay by the phone. It's gonna be a long day." He kissed May and took off to the sheds and the 4x4s. He could hear Joe Parker's siren in the distance, coming up the mountain. Rage got to Joan and Mike first. She was so scared and distraught. Dave didn't need to get closer to tell that. Mike was yelling, "Jacob!" and they were looking all over. Joan, startled at Rage's running up. He's okay, ma'am. I'm Dave, and this is Rage. Can we help? Are you hurt?" The smoke, black and nasty, billowed out of the cave, and Joan ran up. "No, we are okay. There was this big explosion, and my son, he's only 6. He is missing. He was right here. I turned around, and now he's gone. Like one of those missing 411 David what's-his-name things. I mean, he just disappeared, and isn't answering me. He was right here." I understand, ma'am. Please calm down and sit right here." He helped her to a rock off the trail, away from the smoke. Dave calmly said, "Now, take a breath and start again. Where did you last see him?" Joan explained, and Rage sniffed around and sat by Mike, who pet him without really thinking about it much. He had clear tracks of tears running down his dust-stained face. Joan went on, and Dave took it all in. "Okay," he said. "Do you have anything of Jacob's? Something that he might have worn?" "Yes, his hoodie, but what—" "Don't worry. Just please give it to me if you have it." She took off her backpack, felt around inside, and pulled out a faded red hoodie in a child's small, and burst into tears again. Dave took it from her and said, "Thank you. Did either of you see anyone else on the trail? Hear a dirt bike or an RV, maybe?" Joan shook her head no, and looked at Mike, who did the same. "Sit right here, please." He looked toward his dog. "Rage, work boy?" Rage perked up and ran over to Dave, sat straight up, and looked at his friend. Dave said something in a language Joan didn't understand, and Rage jumped up into action on all fours and just breathed in the scent on the hoodie. I'm with SARS, ma'am, out of Albany, New York. Rage here is a rescue dog. It stands for search and rescue. Rage will find your boy. He couldn't have gone far. Please just sit here and we will have a look. Take care of your mom, son, and stay here so we're looking for 2 lost boys, okay?
Dave looked at Mike and smiled, and Mike smiled back.
Rage, go! Dave said, and Rage sprung into action. He sniffed around the area, picked up a scent, and moved through the bushes like the wind toward the smoke. Jacob crawled into a wonder of a secret, his eyes open wide with glee. A huge room yawned out of the opening of the tunnel. He could hear water dripping, and it echoed in front of him. He could stand up now, so he took the flashlight out of his mouth and looked around. A small slit in the ceiling shone a beam of daylight into the darkened cave. The boy looked up with the flashlight and could see bats hanging there. A few flew up and out of the opening in the ceiling, and he whispered, "Cool." He followed his light's beam around the cave walls, thinking there were some wicked hiding spots for pirate treasure in here. He remembered his pirate stories very well, and he knew there would be a possible skeleton guard. A pirate killed by Blackbeard or that Long John Silvers, maybe. Killed and left to guard the treasure for all eternity. Jacob said this last part out loud, swishing his flashlight in front of him like a sword. Just then, a large explosion came from the direction he had just left. He let out a scream and jumped away and landed on his back. Rock dust came from the tunnel he had just crawled through in a blast of hot air, and he covered his ears and looked up as more bats flew out of the hole above, and they flew all around the cave, screeching as they went. The tunnel weeped out dust and what looked like smoke. A cave-in, he thought. Oh, man, oh, man. Jacob looked around with his light, mostly just rock and maybe what looked like 2 other openings in the cave walls. They were dark, but worth a look, he thought. He was getting a bit scared now. The tunnel just caved in that he crawled through, just barely missing him. He had no idea what that bang was, but he had to find a way out, and he got up to check out the other openings. From the other side of the cave, he heard what he thought was laughter. "Don't be a silly baby. You have to be brave and find a way out of here," he said to himself. He heard it again, showing his light around. Nothing. Cracks in the rocks, a dead rat, spider webs as big as cars stretched across the walls. He bent down to try and see down the tunnel he had just crawled through, and it felt like heat and dust and smoke was still coming through it. He knew he had to get out of there. Ma will be so mad, he frowned. He stood up and brushed off his knees and looked again. There was a huge puddle, a lake really. He thought the water was dark and smelled bad too. Another laugh came. From where though? And Jacob asked himself. All right, I hear you. You come out, he warned. Who's in here? The light's beam showed on rock walls an old dead thing, just bones really. A squirrel maybe? He wondered. It hung off the edge of a rock, and its bone tail dipped into the murky water. A few bats still hanging upside down from the ceiling, some flitting their wings. This all started to creep Jacob out, like when Mike used to scare him jumping out from behind something in the basement laundry room, or telling spook stories in the dark till he wanted to cry. But he didn't. Mike would never let up if he did. He started toward what looked like his way out, making his way along the wall, away from the smelly water. I see you. And then that laughter. Jacob almost dropped his light, but steadied himself and showed it in the direction of the voice. A small girl in a white and blue dress was standing on the other side of the water in the back part of the cave. I see you, she said again. Jacob just froze and stammered out a few words. Who are you? You scared me. I am Coralie. Do you want to play with me? Jacob was shocked. Not now. I'm looking for treasure and another way out of here. Jacob said, puffing out his chest a bit, and remembered. I followed that rabbit in here. He showed the light around with no sign of the rabbit, and she laughed again. I don't see any rabbit, silly baby. The boy thought for a moment. Had I said that out loud? Shaking it off quick, he thought, do you know if there's pirate treasure here? Jacob blurted out, not really thinking at all. She said, mayhap I do, but I'm not telling. And she leaned towards him almost over the edge of the dark water and said, unless you play a game with me first. Jacob thought and stuck out his chin. Oh, heck, I don't have time for no games. Then I'm not telling, and crossed her arms. Jacob thought again. Oh, okay, well, do you know which of these tunnels takes us out of here? That one there is all smoky. He pointed the way he came. Sure, I play here all the time. If I show you, will you come to the playground and meet my friends? Wanting this to be so over, the scared 6-year-old said, oh, sure, I guess, just tell me. You have to promise, cross your heart, and hope to die. Jacob rolled his eyes and reluctantly did so. This was so stupid, he thought. And Coralie quick screwed up her face and said, that's not very nice. As if she heard him, and then she laughed. This scared Jacob even more, and he was officially no longer having fun. Coralie made her way around the cave's pool and sang as she did. It was creepy, he thought, and he made small talk as she did to try to push away the feeling. Hey, well, where? His voice stuck and he swallowed and tried again. Where is this playground? He managed. Just outside. It's our playground, mine and all my friends, she said, and laughed the creepy little laugh. He almost thought, dumb girls, and stopped himself, and she looked at him and squinted in the flashlight beam. He quick tried thinking of something else. Hey, Be careful you don't slip there, he called to her. She smiled a bit of a smile. I won't. I'm here quite a lot, and giggled. Where are your friends now? Jacob was getting a bit worried. He wanted out of this place. They're waiting for us on the playground, and Jacob just shivered. Rage ran right to the side of the explosion. Smoke wafted from above him, easing a bit up now. What you got, boy? Rage was digging at the fallen rocks. Dirt flew behind him, and Dave ran up and talked to the dog as if he were a partner and not a dog at all. Okay, Rage, is he there? The dog dug. Dave started pulling rocks. He noticed there was a plywood door covered in vines, burnt and hanging, and this seemed odd to him. He didn't know what it meant, but he didn't like it. He heard a yell. Joan! A familiar voice. It was George, out of breath and running around the corner. Dave stood up and went toward the trail. Dave! Oh, thank God! Listen to me! Joan joined them with Mike hanging onto her arm, still scared and watching intently. Dave, Joan, I was on the hill, bird watching, and he pointed and dropped his heavy pack. Breathless, he got the words out. I saw, through my binoculars, Jacob went in this way. He pointed, going by the landscaping he saw from above, and then noticed the smoke coming from where he saw Jacob disappear. His hope fell, and he added, I tried to call down, but you didn't hear me. Dave said, Come with me. They all ran toward the cave-in. Stay back, Joan. Be careful here. She held herself together, worried, yes, but kept her grounding for Mike. Rage was digging like mad. Help me with this, George, Dave asked as they moved the rocks they could. Rage is on Jacob's scent. He hasn't laid down, George, Dave whispered to him. George asked Dave as they rolled the debris, and George, he is a search and rescue dog. He has worked many fires, and we were in Key West. Our group went down there to help. If Jacob was gone, he turned around and whispered to Bart, so he wouldn't let Joan overhear. Rage would lay down. I see. I called down to Greta on the walkie. Sheriff is on his way, and he's bringing help. Oh, that's great, George. I didn't think I could get Joan to go down for help. That's good news. Okay, help me with this big one. They both pulled on a large rock, and George looked to his side to find a branch to maybe help pry it. Dave pulled himself up and put his back against the rubble and pushed with his feet, and the rock gave way. Look out, Rage! Rage moved back and then started digging, and he was making progress and could reach up to his shoulders now. Dave and George did their best to move the rocks away for the dog. Dave heard Rage bark and heard a bit of an echo. Rage was through. Rage stopped, pulled out of the hole he had made, his nose covered in red clay and soot. Woo! Okay, Rage, you got his trail, Dave asked and reached for the hoodie and put it under his nose. Okay, buddy, you go. And Rage disappeared into the hole. Joan covered her mouth to stifle a cry, and Mike squeezed her arm.
I see you.
Jacob watched the girl with his light as she stepped into his side of the cave pond. She looked pale and sick, he thought, like that kid in his class who was always missing school. I can show you now. Follow me. But don't you forget your promise. This way. Come on. And she led him down the tunnel to the right. He showed his flashlight beam ahead, and it was large enough to stand up in. Cora Lee walked ahead of him like she knew the tunnel by heart, and she ran her fingers along the wall as she did. It made him feel all goosebumpy, and he tried to find things to say. "How long is this tunnel? Does it go all the way out?" "Oh, it's not far. You will see the light in a bit around the turn." And she giggled again and sang that creepy song of hers. It gave Jacob the willies, and he tried to think of things to say to break away from the fear. Do you go to school around here? Is that where the playground is?" He managed to push out the words. "Oh, no," she answered. "I don't go to school. I got sick, and my ma didn't make me go anymore." She giggled as she spoke, and Jacob was running out of things to talk about, and looked back down the tunnel they had just come back from, and where they had entered was much further away than he had thought. The tunnel's walls seemed to blur and move in and out like a funhouse hallway. It looked like the walls were breathing, and he felt fuzzy, and it felt hard to breathe in here. Scared, he asked more questions. How much further is it anyway? This seems so far." Coralie giggled. "Oh, it's not far a bed here. Quit being squirrely." He turned back around, and his flashlight beam lit up the wall of the tunnel she was running her hand along. And then he realized the light beam, it went right through Coralie. Dave heard Rage bark once and felt like he was more to the right of the cave's entrance than further back. He touched that part of the rock and yelled, "Go get him, boy!" And Joan sat down on the ground, put her head in her hands, and cried. Dave and George pulled at the rocks that could move, and they heard a motor coming up the trail. Jeb ran into the garage, into the room his cot was in, grabbed at some jeans on a chair and picked up a t-shirt. Tater was asking him what he thought that explosion was, and Jeb was in no mood to answer questions. He quickly changed his shirt and wriggled into his jeans. Tater was what they called slow, and he usually had patience with him. He loved the old cars and worked hard, but there was no way he could bring him in on the secret of his daddy's deal. "We are just going to go have a look-see. Is there gas in that go-kart of yours?" "Sure is. Filled it up this morning." "Okay, you're going to drive me somewhere, and you ain't going to ask me no more questions right now, okay? My truck won't get far into those trails." "Well, okay, Jeb," Tater answered, and watched Jeb grab a set of keys off the board, and he followed him out to the golf cart. Jeb saw some black rags hanging out of the little cart storage trunk and yelled at Tater, "I told you, don't have them greasy rags laying around, Tate. They can cause a fire quick. Daddy never liked them laying around." Tater quick lifted the trunk, a scared look on his face. He hated when Jeb yelled. "Okay, I'll take care of them, Jeb. I promise, Jeb." He jumped in the old golf cart. "Now let's go fast, Tate. Step on it." "Where we a-going again, Jeb?" Tater asked as he turned the key. "Get me to the blue trail, Tate, and hurry." Chuck McGee rode these trails all the time and knew right where Greta had meant. Deputy Joe Parker hung on the bar on the side-by-side four-wheeler like his life depended on it. Chuck bounced and laughed a bit, and Joe grabbed his hat, and the shovels and picks in the back rattled. There were 2 more of these little scooters, Chuck called them, back with May and Greta, all gassed up and waiting on the sheriff. Dave did his best to fit in the hole Rage dug, and he had pulled a few more rock from the opening, but couldn't fit all the way in. Chuck McGee pulled up the trail and jumped out with the deputy. George stood up and filled them in, and Deputy Parker would take down all the statements officially later. There was a kid possibly hurt here, and that took precedence. The deputy called into Sheriff Cook. "It looks bad, Sheriff. Something blew up in here for sure. An old cave looks like. All, well, caved in. A child, age 6, seen by a witness to possibly be in there. Right before the blast. Oh, no further word. Oh, Lord," is all Deputy Joe could make out coming back over the walkie. Chuck got 2 picks and shovels out of the little 4x4, and they all started working on the rocks. Dave told Chuck and Joe about Rage, and they were all grateful they had a trained search dog on duty already. Dave worried for his friend, but knew if he had a scent, Rage wouldn't stop till he reached his source. It was what he was trained to do, after all. After Irma, when his Albany unit was sent to help in Key West, he lost sight of Rage for half a day in the rubble of a hotel there. When Dave and the rescue volunteers finally broke through the debris, he found Rage laying next to a woman that was pinned by a support wall, and Rage had sat with her for hours, letting out barks to keep those digging on course. 2 more motors were heard speeding up the trail, and the men kept at it, loosening rock and waving smoke away as they broke through. Sheriff Bill Cook got out of the side-by-side and made his way toward the commotion. Joan and George filled him in with add-ons from Deputy Joe. "Bubba, grab a couple of those shovels out in the four-wheeler. Let's get this open. Everyone not ding it. Please stay back. Let 'em work. We don't need anyone else." He stopped and looked at little Mike's tear-stained face and changed his words. "Anyone else lost up here? Damn it, McGee, what do you think? Kids pulling something up here in these caves? Has to be something on fire in there, all this black smoke." The smoke was definitely backing down, but still drifting through the rock spaces. "I don't know, Bill. Hadn't seen anything up here in a while, just people fishing and the like." "Well, if this boy's in here, we're going to find out. Any chance there's another entrance? Is this one of the caves on your map, Chuck?" McGee said, I have never seen this one, and the college and the Nature Society that mapped those out never had this one on the map either." Dave heard a distant bark, meaning Rage was still on the case. Chuck introduced Dave to Bill as the others moved back, but cleared enough space to start to swing a pick and get a better hold of a big rock there. Sheriff reached out his hand to Dave. "Good to have you aboard, son. Sorry to meet under these circumstances." Dave shook the big man's hand and said, "Same here. Didn't plan on reporting to work this soon, but glad to be of any help I can." "Well, we're damn glad to have you. Search and rescue will be coming out of Huntsville. Nan has a bet on them being at least 20 to 30 minutes out still." Good, Chuck said, and added, "At this rate, we might just get in there before then." Bubba yelled, "Look out!" and the rock gave way. Dust flew up and out of the cave opening. Joe turned on the beam of the heavy flashlight he had, and so did the sheriff, and light beamed through the smoke and down into the tunnel that opened into the side of the mountain. Joe coughed at the smoke and waved his hand and pushed forward. Got 2 more flashlights out of the four-wheeler and handed one to Dave. Dave moved rock from the bottom right of the cave and found a small tunnel off to one side. He showed the light into it and called out, "Rage!" He waited and a far-off answer came back. Woof! And Dave smiled. Jeb was wishing he had a faster vehicle and repeatedly told Tater to step on it, will you? But the old golf cart Tater used to putz around the cabin's grounds was doing its very best. Jeb didn't know what had happened, but the direction the smoke was coming from worried him. He couldn't see the smoke now, but he just had to get a better look. Jeb touched the set of keys in his pocket now and thought to himself, Skeet said he packed that other truck and left it in the hiding spot on the east tunnel entrance. If there was anything up, he could get it, and the shine packed in it to the buyer. Man, Skeet, what'd you do, man? What'd you do? His heart sank even further as he knew the blast would have brought even more people than him and Tate toward the place he had kept secret all his life. Step on it, Tater, please, he said, a bit more pleading this time. Bubba, get that spotlight up here and grab that extinguisher too. There's some light ahead, Sheriff Bill called back. The men pushed forward. Joe yelled out for Jacob with no response. Dave was up front with Joe now, and he could see a slight flicker of fire behind them. Sheriff Cook, Chuck, then Bubba, last in line, and his 6'3" frame was having the hardest time of this part of the tunnel. George waited with Mike and Joan at the entrance, hoping the little crew would find Jacob and find him alive. Dave knew Rage would be trying to find him too. Maybe this led to where they were. The tunnel got lower, and the men had to hunch down more. And Joe pushed through and hollered back, Sheriff, there's a cave in here. Bubba, pass up that extinguisher and some more lights. Jacob swallowed hard. That's not real, he thought. He ran the flashlight beam down to her legs and saw it went right through them. He held on to his fear and thought of the rabbit, just the rabbit, or anything but what he just saw. He was not a silly baby, he thought. He knew she could hear his thinking, and he had been in many a book before. He tried to remember the story, to think of anything but the light that was going through Coralie. How far now, Coralie? She laughed. And he thought of just running back or forward, of any way but staying here. He was scared now, officially scared, and wished he had never seen this old cave. Coralie pointed ahead at a sliver of light that showed ahead. The dust of the cave danced in the beams of light. Jacob's heart lifted a bit. A way out! The whisper excited him, but as light as wind within his own head. He was scared to blurt out words now. He was so close. Follow me. Coralie started to skip now. Come with me, Jacob. Jacob was startled. He had never said his name. Not once has he said his name. He fought as long as he was headed out of this mess. She could call him anything, he thought. The tunnel made a turn, and there was sunlight, beautiful, beautiful sunlight, emerged in front of him and Coralie. It almost blinded Jacob, and he blinked his eyes. Coralie stopped in front of him and pointed. "See, I told you, silly baby." As she turned around and Jacob gasped and drew in the stale air, Coralie's face had changed into a bony gray mask, just like the skull on the pirate's flag. He was stunned and dropped the flashlight at his feet. Coralie, or the thing she had become, giggled and leaned into his own face. Breath that smelled like his hamster cage, and Mike's old sneakers took over his nostrils, and he wanted to puke. He fell back against the cave wall and glanced over her shoulder to make a run for the exit back into the real world. There, standing in the opening of the cave, was 6 or 7 other children. They were shadowed figures backed by the clean, bright daylight of the sun. One, a little girl, held a stuffed teddy bear, and she was dressed in rags. Half her face was missing. A taller boy stood with blood running out of his mouth that hung open in a silent scream, and his arm hung at his side, ripped open to the bone. 2 boys stood with him, their hands clasped together, with angry faces. The gaping wounds across both of their throats oozed blood down the front of their white shirts and little narrow black ties, and matched the red of their school uniforms. A bigger boy stood behind them. His head hung to one side, and it swayed back and forth and looked at Jacob with bulging eyes. An older girl, dressed in overalls and high-top sneakers, stood by him, her smile framed in the blood that ran from her head wound and soaked her long blonde pigtails to a tomato red. Coralie spoke, and Jacob's eyes focused back on her. "Remember your promise, little rabbit. Your promise to stay and to play with us. You crossed your heart and hoped to die." And she giggled, and the foul air from her breath made Jacob want to puke again. He was pushed up against the cave wall and was begging his feet to move, for his legs to run. But he was frozen stiff. He closed his eyes and turned away from her stench, and she took one bony hand and grabbed him by the chin, turned his face to look at her, and pinned him with the other hand on his shoulder. "Come and play with us, Jacob," he heard from the others behind her in the opening of the cave. "Come and play." If he could only run, make his legs move. He felt a long, warm stream of pee run down his leg, and Coralie laughed, opened her mouth, and drew in a deep breath close to his mouth. He thought she was going to kiss him, but she just breathed in deep, and Jacob could feel his knees weaken, and his head got fuzzy again. "Come and play with us, Jacob." He could hear them chanting, and he thought it couldn't be that bad. Wouldn't be that bad. His thoughts giving in to Coralie's breath and seemed to follow the air she sucked from him. From him, he thought, and he could feel his legs no more. Bubba passed up the extinguisher to Chuck, Chuck to Dave, and Dave to Joe. Joe pulled the pin and aimed the spray forward and walked in as he did, now giving off little bursts of the foam. Dave walked behind him and saw small groups of flames and flickers of the orange light played on the gray walls. They both stopped there. Well, Joe stopped abruptly, and Dave ran into the back of him. Joe held up one hand in a stop motion as if he was the forward observer in the jungles of Vietnam. He stood and looked around a moment and whispered, "Holy fuck." The last of the word lost in the beginning of a whistle, low and solemn. As Joe reached up and took off his hat, and in a low voice let these words ease low from his mouth. "Sheriff, we have a situation in here." Dave looked over Joe's shoulder with his spotlight's beam in the small clearings of smoke that were dancing in the room. He could see what looked like centerfolds. They were plastered like wallpaper on one wall. The nudes' bodies curled and burnt upwards and still smoldering. One, Dave forgot her name, had blood splattered in jellied chunks sliding down her skin as a black ribbon of burnt edge creeped ever closer upward. Some looked untouched and smiling at what they too were seeing here. "Oh my God," whispered Dave as he moved around the part of the room he could see with the light. Joe was taking careful steps forward and calling back one-word descriptions. "Deceased, individual, male, middle-aged, I think," came words slow and deliberate, Joe's voice only shaking enough for Dave to pick up. But Dave understood. Sheriff called up toward the front of this line and asked, "What's that? Repeat, deputy?" Chuck looked back toward the sheriff. "Dead, middle-aged. Says it's hard to tell." "What about the boy? You see any sign of the boy?" Sheriff Bill called up. "Hold on, it's hard to see. There's stuff all over the floor here, Sheriff." Joe took 2 steps forward, and Dave could move into the cave a bit more. Dave shined his light downward. There was blood everywhere, glass and metal parts singed and strewn throughout. He could see what looked like a body laying in the debris. A man, most likely, or used to be anyway, Dave thought. Maybe in overhauls. Burnt patches in the denim opened to holes deep in the skin of the man, like the jeans had melted into this man and became part of him. One leg, Dave could see, as a slight wind moved the smoke, had blown back broken and rested across what used to be this man's chest. Joe's light beam played against the wall and made the dust and smoke look like it was dancing in the mayhem of the scene. And Dave caught what looked like an eyeball, complete with its optic nerves and stringing goo attached to the breast of a centerfold, with a piece of copper tubing it looked like. Joe winced and turned his light to the left. The smoke seemed being pulled away down another exit or tunnel. Joe called back, "Looks like another exit in here, boss," and took another step. The line of men all moved with him, like a macabre dance line in a bar's closing hour bunny hop, each man peeking over the guy in front and catching glimpses of a scene out of a Stephen King movie. Bubba asked the sheriff if he wanted him to call it in yet. "Let's wait and see what we have first, son. Let's find the boy if we can." And they waited as Joe, the forward observer in this squad, moved his feet carefully through the muck on the floor. Joe's light picked up what he thought used to be a still, mangled and smoldering, with little patches of fire still burning the fuel below. Joe hit them with quick bursts of the extinguisher. "Sheriff, we have what I think was a still." "I knew it!" Chuck exclaimed and patted Dave on the back of the shoulder. Sheriff reached up and pulled off his hat and said, "Damn it!" nodded his head and patted Chuck's shoulder as if to say, "Makes sense," and tossed a look backwards toward Bubba, who looked down at the sheriff, still hunched in the tunnel, and he nodded too, all of them looking like they all agreed with the final pick of a letter on the Wheel of Fortune game. "Few more steps in, Sheriff. Hold on a second," Joe called back, and Dave shone his light at the deputy's feet. "Look out," he whispered loudly to the back of Joe's head. Joe looked down and saw a pile of mangled and twisted goo, maybe a pile of rats on the floor. Joe almost stepped in it. "Thanks," Joe whispered back and shuddered. "Still blue for sure, Sheriff. No sign of the boy yet." Joe cleared 2 more steps and Dave and Chuck were in. The sheriff behind them was now getting a look, and the first thing he saw on the wall was the eyeball slowly sliding down the stomach of Farrah Fawcett. "Oh my God," he whispered. Bubba could stand up now and showed his mag light in. Beams of light moved all around the cave room, each revealing a new and more grotesque scene, like an old 8mm movie playing a massacre of the dead and dying. "Is he dead, Joe?" Sheriff called over to Joe, who was blocking his view of the man who was bent backwards over a crate table, it looked like, through the smoke. Joe showed his light on the man's face, or what used to be his face. His head was gone from the nose up. Red jellied goo poured from the opening where his skull used to be. "Oh, he's dead, Sheriff," Joe gulped, and handed back the extinguisher to Dave, who passed it to Bubba. Each man walked gingerly through the room, careful not to step in or on anything, as the sheriff said to do just that. "This here's a crime scene, gentlemen. Watch where you step, don't touch anything, and look for signs of that boy. See if you can get any ID off this poor sap," he added toward Joe, who was now the closest to what used to be Skeet. "And nobody yell out. We don't know how sturdy it is in here now." Chuck was looking all around the floor with his mag light aimed at what looked like ball bearings, gleaming red and surrounded by glistening broken glass and twisted metal in his beam. Mason jars stacked and broken among what looked like smoldering magazines and piles smoked on the floor. Dave really felt for Joe and tried to help him see by aiming his light where Joe was looking on the body. Joe reached in his pocket and took out rubber gloves and placed a hand in each one. Took out a pen light and placed it in his mouth and handed Dave his spotlight. He gripped what he thought were pockets and reached the plastic of the gloves, slipping it into the space soaked with blood. He looked up at Dave and shook his head. Nothing. He reached under the misshapen leg across Skeet's chest and down into the side pocket. There located something and pulled it out. A gold pocket watch. He looked up at the sheriff, who was standing behind him now, and the sheriff produced a Ziploc bag from his pocket, and Joe dropped it in. The pocket was empty now, and Joe felt around the back, reached in a back pocket, and pulled out a wallet. "Found his billfold, Sheriff," Joe announced. The deputy carefully opened it and looked for an ID. There was one, tucked where money would be if Skeet had any. Pulled out the plastic card and wiped the blood off its surface. A smiling picture of Skeet emerged, black hair stringing off his face with 2 teeth missing right up front. "Oswald Malcolm Davis," Joe read aloud. "Skeeter Davis, that no account. I scared him off these trails more'n once," Chuck called back. "Figures he'd be up here making shine. Hung with that old Jeb Perkins. He's probably in on it, too. Filed his daddy's old deeds, I'll bet." Sheriff Parker pulled out another plastic bag and opened it for Joe, and Joe dropped in the wallet. Bubba saw a pile of crates and mismatched cushions along the back wall. Carefully moved a seat cushion that looked like one his granny had had on her sun porch, except this one had 2 fingers sliding down the faded flowers like they were trying to pick the blooms for a bouquet. "No sign of the boy here, Sheriff," Bubba gulped. He could feel the biscuits and gravy he'd had for breakfast trying to make a hasty escape. Dave thought out loud, "I wonder where that other tunnel leads to," and shone a light in that direction. Chuck said he didn't know. Curious, he added his light to Dave's, and they both caught a glimpse of another poster of a blonde girl with a bloody ear slowly making its way down her naked thigh, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The ear let go and plopped onto the floor. Immediately, a huge rat with one ear half missing darted from behind a metal shelving, picked up the ear in his mouth, and ran down the tunnel into the darkness there. Dave looked at Chuck and almost wanted to laugh if it wasn't so damn wrong. Chuck made an "oh well" face and shrugged. Sheriff Cook took off his hat, wiped at his forehead, and shook the watch and the wallet Ziploc bags in his hand. "Joe, leave the rest to the ME now. We got an ID. Bubba, you go back out and call this in. Tell him it was a still explosion. Fire's out. 1 adult male. DOA. Make sure that woman knows there's no sign of the boy in here, and we are going to continue the search in through here. And tell Nan to bring in search and rescue team. Joe, you come with me, and let's see if this tunnel goes anywhere. Bring all the lights, fellas." Bubba was darn glad to leave and made his way back out the tunnel and did as he was instructed. Joan, George, and Mike jumped up as he exited the tunnel, and he filled them in as best he could. The rest of the men left the gruesome scene behind them as they made their way down the dark tunnel out the back of the cave. Dave whispered out, "Jacob? Rage?" Tater took the last turn onto the blue trail, and Jeb's stomach was jumping with each bump. He knew he would chuck again if there was anything left in his stomach to do so. They made the turn and saw 4-wheelers parked along the trail, and a huge deputy standing by one of them. "Turn around, Tate! Go the other way!" Right then Jeb knew. He knew he had lost his daddy still. He had not taken care of business. He knew if his daddy was there, he'd have beat him plumb to death. He could hear his father laughing in his head, and it made him shudder to the bones. Jacob was frozen in the grip of Coralie. He could hear the other children still outside the tunnel chanting, "Come play with us. Come play with us, Jacob. Come play with us." Over and over, like it was a song. Jacob felt lightheaded and almost dreamy with fear all around the edges. And he was doing his own chanting inside his head. "Run, run, run." But his feet would not move. Coralie reached in to take another deep breath, and Jacob tried not to look. He squinted his eyes tight and begged his feet to move. He felt the air almost pull from him, like she was sucking the life right out of his body. Jacob reached down deep in his little mind and drew out a prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before... Coralie drew back and let out a hiss, and Jacob's eyes flew open, and he saw her look away from him. She still had him by one shoulder, but he could feel the ground beneath his feet again. Coralie was looking down the tunnel, and Jacob heard a blood-curdling growl. Coralie let Jacob go, and he dropped to the ground, landing on his knees. He was staring down the dark tunnel he had walked up with Coralie. He crawled backwards till he hit the tunnel wall and looked up at Coralie, who was hissing at the darkness of the tunnel. Jacob was stunned and doing his best to get up and run, his legs not quite back enough to do so. He heard another growl come from the darkness and watched as Coralie stepped backwards. Just then, a dark shape emerged from the shadows. A huge black dog baring its teeth and moving forward with deliberate steps. The dog broke into a growling, barking mix that lit up the tunnel with echoing chaos and broke into a run straight for Coralie. Coralie retracted backwards, holding up her hands, and added her own scream to the echoing turbulence. The dog landed on Coralie, and in mid-fall backwards, she simply disappeared. Without seeming to notice, the black dog picked up its stride and began to growl again towards the opening in the cave. Jacob turned his head to see, and the damaged children were raising their hands to protect themselves and let out screams of their own. The dog broke into a run, and Jacob watched as each kid faded into nothingness before his very eyes. Jacob brought his little hands to his mouth and screamed in them. The dog stopped his running, more like trotted over now to where the children were, and sniffed the ground there, wagged his tail, and turned back toward Jacob, who was one complete shiver at this point, shaking to his very shoes. His mind was whirling at what he had just saw, and he was so scared. He wanted his mom for sure, and he had no idea where he was. The large black dog looked at Jacob, tipped his head to one side, and slowly walked toward Jacob. Little Jacob pushed himself against the wall, whispering, "No, no, no more, please, no more." And Rage walked slowly up to him, bowed his head a bit, and sniffed the air around Jacob, and his tail began to wag. And he gently nudged Jacob's leg with his nose and sat down in front of him. Jacob, realizing this dog had just saved him, whispered, "Thank you." Rage sat up and leaned in. Jacob winced back a little, and Rage licked his face, reached down and took a hold of Jacob's pants leg and pulled gently. Jacob came back just a little bit then. This was a good guide dog, he thought. When Jacob pulled himself up and steadied himself with one hand on the tunnel wall, and Rage reached in and pulled his pant leg again, walking backwards toward the tunnel exit. "Okay, boy, I can follow you. I'll follow you." Rage moved right next to Jacob, and together they walked toward the daylight. Dave walked with Joe, Chuck, and Sheriff Cook down the dark tunnel, and they came across large box fans hooked up to car batteries along the way. One right by the cave exit had blown over, its back mashed in, but the fan kept going and scraping its sides of the casing in a screeching sound, and Joe reached down and yanked the wires off the battery, and it died with a thankful They had quite the setup, didn't they? Sheriff Cook said. Sure did, Joe answered. Probably been running shine out of here for years, Chuck added. Sure doesn't look good for us, does it, Parker? Oh, sir, it sure doesn't. This had to open up soon if they were running an exhaust system here, Dave added. Rage went in, trailing that boy up at the entrance at the main opening, and this feels like it's moving away from that. This could lead anywhere, boys. Some of these tunnels go on for miles out here, Chuck noted. They turned the corner as Dave finished, and up ahead was a wash of daylight through tangled vines of kudzu. The men moved quickly towards it. They could see the light streaming through, and Sheriff nodded towards Joe, and Joe proceeded kicking out the entrance, and the men pulled at the vines until they were outside. Dave stepped out of the hole and looked around. They were off the side of the mountain, just barely on the edge of a cliff, and he looked down at a drop-off leading into the thick trees below. Clever some bitches, Sheriff Bill said. Let's go back, boys. End of the line. Jeb told Tater to take him around the other side of the trails toward the thick woods, and Tate knew. He'd get that truck and sneak out at dark and never come back here. He knew that old sheriff would get him this time. He was still mad he didn't get him for boosting cars back a couple years ago. Caused me all kinds of worry, he said out loud. What, Jeb? You okay? Tate asked. Just drive, Tate. Dave, Chuck, Sheriff Cook, and Deputy Parker emerged from the cave opening. George, Joan, and Mike were sitting in one of the four-wheelers, and Bubba was talking to them. Joan saw the men and jumped up hopefully, and Sheriff Cook shook his head, and she sat back down and started to cry. Dave said, "Let me check that tunnel again," and he and Joe went back to the cave's mouth, and Dave shone a light and yelled, "Rage! Rage!" He waited. Nothing. He knew not to give up hope. Search and rescue would be here soon, but he had no idea where this tunnel ended up. I just don't know, Deputy. I know these things can go on for days. What is he, 6 years old? That's what I was told, Joe said and hung his head a bit. Dave stood in the clearing between the cave and the trail where the four-wheelers were parked. Threw his head back and looked around the top of the rocks the cave was hidden in. Scanned the trees and looked toward the sky. Rage! He let out a yell that echoed off the rocks, and he felt spent and worried now. Joe walked up and put a hand on his shoulder. You did what you could, man. You did what you could. Woo! Dave swung around and looked up, shielded his eyes from the glare of the sun. Off to the right, through the trees above them, came another woof! Rage! Dave yelled and ran in that direction. He got a better hold on where the bark was coming from and looked above them toward a rocky ridge, and stepping into view was a beautiful black dog with a little boy holding onto his collar and sucking his thumb. Tater pulled over where Jeb had pointed. Okay, Tate, I need you to go right back to that garage. Talk to nobody, do you hear? We were never up here. Tate nodded, and Jeb slapped Tate's hat and knocked it down over his eyes. I need you to focus, Tate. Do you understand? Tate straightened his hat back. Yes, Jeb, I understand. Talk to no one. We was never up here. Jeb smiled a bit. That's right. I need you to stay down the shop and finish that John Deere for old Hampton. Parts are on my bench. It's an easy fix. You can do it. You got me? Jeb raised a hand, and Tater flinched and put up his hand. I got you. Clear, Jeb. Finish Hampton's tractor. Tate frowned. Are you okay, Jeb? Tate was worried for his friend. Jeb wasn't much of one, but he didn't have many. Not since old Bob died. Jeb revved up now, pulled himself out of the golf cart. Don't you worry on me, Tate. Just do as I say. Anyone asks, I'm sick in the cot and taking no calls or new work today. All right? Jeb leaned in the cart with one arm over its hood, looked long and hard at Tater. I mean what I say. We were never up here. I'm counting on you. Take care of business, Tater. I'll be back late tonight, and we'll go in town, get us a pizza and a six, okay? Tater smiled and fixed his hat straight again. Okay, Jeb, I will. Not too late, Jeb. That place scares me after dark. Okay, Jeb? Jeb agreed. Not too late, Tate. Slapped the hood of the golf cart and added, Go on now. Straight back, Tater. Tater pulled off and left Jeb in what looked like the middle of nowhere. Jeb watched him till he couldn't see him no more, and then looked up toward the cliff. A small stream of smoke lofted out of the opening toward the tunnel above, and Jeb stepped backwards deeper into the tree line and watched, wondering how bad it really was. You know that good-for-nothing, worthless friend of yourn, Blue Old Sally. He wasn't taking care of business, and it's on you, you little shit. His father's voice came through loud and clear in Jeb's head. He crunched down further into the thicket of the wood line and looked upwards again at the back tunnel that came off the Stills cave. Smoke that black had to be serious. Sally was gone, all right. Jeb reached up and took off his hat and held it to his chest. Oh, Sally, he said, almost tears in his voice. I should have never left you with old Skeet. It's all my fault. Just then he saw movement on the cliff by the tunnel's opening. Looked like somebody was kicking a covering down from the inside. Jeb huddled backwards again and pulled a leafy branch around in front and watched intently as the deputy, looked like that Deputy Parker, and some tall guy he'd never seen, pushed out of the tunnel and stood there looking around. Oh no, there came Chuck McGee, and there's old Sheriff Bill Cook in his tan uniform and his big old cowboy hat. Jeb didn't move. He knew it was over now. He is done for. Sally's gone. Skeet probably in cuffs somewhere by now, and all his girls he'd never see again. The cases of shine lost. Oh, Sally, oh, Sally. Jeb wanted to cry. Don't you flinch, you sissy boy. Don't you do it. I won't, Daddy, Jeb said this part out loud, squeezing and twisting his hat in his hands so hard he'd like to rip it in half. Rage! Dave called, and his friend barked back. pride and relief welled up in Dave so fast he could hardly believe it all himself. "My God," Joe whispered and put a hand on Dave's shoulder. "My God in heaven, look at that." Deputy Parker burst with happiness and yelled out, "Hey, Sheriff, look!" Everyone turned to see what Deputy Parker was pointing at, and there on the rock ridge they all saw it. Big black dog with a very dirty little boy who was sucking his thumb. "Jacob!" screamed Joan, and she jumped out of the four-wheeler so fast she almost fell, and Bubba caught her with one big arm and almost hugged her as he did. "We will go get him, ma'am. You stay here. You'll get hurt climbing up there." Mike yelled too, "Jacob!" He was truly grateful to see his little brother, that he burst into tears. Chuck looked up and said as he took his hat from his head and held it to his chest, "Sweet Jesus in the morning, look a there." "Well, I'll be dipped and fried," Sheriff Cook smiled. "That's one hell of a dog you got there, son." And he whacked Dave on the back as he gladly gave out orders for his deputies to get up there and bring that boy down to his mama. With a huge smile, he added, "Bubba, you call down to Nan and tell her to call off search and rescue. I'll be dipped," he added, and smacked Chuck on the back now. Dave yelled up to Rage to hold and gave him the hand signal to boot, and Rage woofed and sat down next to the boy, whose grip right now was so tight on Rage's collar he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. He saw the people down below, but he just stood there, not saying a word. He just stood there, and right now, to Jacob, standing was good enough. Jeb waited till the intruders went back in the tunnel before he made a move. "I gotta get that truck out of here," that Skeet loaded. "I'll wait till dark and roll her halfway down the road before I even turn her on. Be police moving all over here most of the day, I reckon. I'll just wait 'em out." Jeb pushed through the brush and felt a sigh of relief when he caught a glimpse of the camouflage-covered truck, right where he had told Skeet to keep it. "Least he got that right," he said out loud to no one. He moved around the back and lifted the camo nettings cover over the side of the truck bed. He could see the cases of shine lined up in their cases, and like dollar signs formed clear in his mind. "Good man, Skeet," he thought quick, and covered her back up, patted the truck, and ran round to the driver's side door, took out the keys, and unlocked her. This was his old 1075 Silverado. A beauty she was, original blue paint with white panels running down her sides. 454 big block she was, purred like a bobcat. "She'll get me where I need to be," he thought. "I got a few hours to kill till dark," he said to himself. He leaned across the seat, popped the button to the glove box, and rattled his hand around inside. "Oh, hell yes!" He pulled out a sleeve of saltines and a can of Vienna sausages, and took out his old pocket knife and eased back in the seat, satisfied for the first time today. He leaned down on the floor, the passenger side, and looked at half a case of mason jars. "Why not?" Jeb smiled and reached for a jar. "A little of the hair dog to bit you." And he laughed, and he choked on a bit of cracker in memory. He sat up straight and remembered the dog thing that Claude, his old Chevy, almost got him the night before. Wasn't far from here, he thought, and suddenly Jeb wasn't as comfortable staying out here till dark. He reached over and pushed down the lock on the door and slid down the seat, opened the jar, and started a drink, for different reasons now. From the thickness of the woods, something big breathed in deeply and a set of green and hungry eyes focused on a human scent not far up the wind, and a low growl formed in its throat, and it too waited for nightfall. You have been listening to Part 4 of The Strange Case of Cabin 22, The Reckoning, an original story by Sysco Murdoch. What waits for Jeb in the woods of this mysterious mountain? Will Jacob recover from his run-in with the ghost of the damaged children from the cave? What has been stalking campers and haunting Dave and Rage in Cabin 22? Tune in to Part 5